There I was, standing steadfast in the courtroom as my former husband's attorney laid into me mercilessly. She's financially unstable. She struggles to provide her children with a stable home, let alone adequate food or clothing, she declared, her voice ringing with disdain. Why should custody be granted to her? My emotions were a whirlwind, but outwardly I remained composed. I could feel the tremors in my palms. I wouldn't let them see me crumble. The judge seemed to consider the lawyer's points, giving slow, thoughtful nods. It was as if the air in the room had thickened, making it hard to breathe. My thoughts raced to my children, Mia and Finn. What would their future hold if they were placed in the care of a man whose motives were driven less by love and more by the desire to wield control? Financially, I was outmatched. His resources allowed him the best legal defense money could buy, and I had next to nothing. Yet there I stood, fighting tooth and nail for my children with the little I had. Suddenly, as I was ensnared by a haunting silence and my own racing thoughts, my 8-year-old son rose to his feet. Mom, he called out, clear enough for every ear in the room. Can I show the judge the letter I discovered in Dad's desk? Everyone in the courtroom pivoted towards him. My husband's face tightened, and his attorney stood momentarily flabbergasted. Even the judge paused, shocked by the interruption. I had no knowledge of any letter. My heart thudded wildly in my chest, but I nodded to my son. As Finn approached the judge, clutching the mysterious letter, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Life hadn't always been this battle in courtrooms, choked by fear of speaking. There was a time when confidence was my second nature. I was vibrant, loved my career, surrounded by friends, and brimming with dreams. But after marrying Eric, the changes were gradual before they suddenly overwhelmed me. In our early days, he was all charm and generosity, with promises that swept me off my feet. He convinced me I shouldn't work, that my place was at home with our children while he handled our finances. You've done enough, he once reassured me. You deserve to rest. I didn't realize the cost of my acquiescence, my independence, my voice, even my safety net. I faded into the backdrop of my own life. After Finn was born, Eric turned colder, more critical. Each expense I incurred underwent his scrutiny. A simple grocery purchase would invite hours of cold silence if not done under his scrutiny. Suggestions of part-time work were met with dismissals that we didn't need my earnings, just my presence at home. By the time he left, I was stripped bare. No savings, no lawyer, hardly any support. He promptly secured legal representation and severed our joint accounts, leaving me scrambling. I discovered solidarity only in the long lines at the public legal aid office, clutching a folder filled with evidence of our makeshift life, receipts, photos of Mia and Finn sharing meals on makeshift plates because our sink was piled high with unwashed dishes. We lived modestly in a cramped apartment, my nights spent working low-paying jobs to barely keep us afloat. Our luxuries were none. A basic phone plan was all I maintained, praying it wouldn't cut out during emergencies. Laundry was a hand-washed affair in our bathtub, hot water cobbled together from pots on the stove. Finn and Mia adapted without complaint, singing and playing, their resilience my only solace. When Eric filed for full custody, painting me as an unfit mother in his neatly calculated documents and pristine images of his home, I felt the weight of his legal prowess aimed directly at us. But I had gathered my own small arsenal: school records, our impeccable rent history, even down to the attire I wore to court, a mix of borrowed items and determination. As we ascended the steps of the courthouse that morning, Finn's hand in mine, his small voice broke the silence. Is everything going to be okay, Mom? I mustered a smile, though strained. Yes, my love, it's going to be okay. However, clarity was not my ally today. In the depths of uncertainty, one truth bolstered me. I cherished my children. Experience had taught me the raw sting of privation and the art of prioritizing their needs above all. I knew the silent sobs muffled by the bathroom door after their bedtime, ensuring their world remained undisturbed. I strived tirelessly to anchor their sense of security amidst our turbulent reality. Seated in the courtroom, I maintained a rigid posture, gluing my eyes forward. Derek evaded my gaze. His lawyer's voice pierced the air and enumerating my deficiencies: lack of financial resources, unstable accommodation, and inconsistent means of transport. She pointed out that my son's shoes were tattered, that my daughter often missed breakfast at school. This wasn't about neglect, this was about poverty. Poverty, a circumstance not criminal yet perilously close, she implied. My throat tightened with suppressed protest. I yearned to counter. Where were you when my dinners were sacrificed for morning cereal? When I pawned my wedding ring to afford winter coats? Yet I restrained, aware that expressions of anger in court could be misinterpreted as instability. The judge's slow nod seemed to affirm each accusation, sinking my heart further. As despair crept in, a gentle pull at my sleeve revived me. It was Luca, my courageous little boy, his eyes large and concerned, asking quietly, "Mom, can I talk to the judge?" The chill in the room intensified as Derek's lawyer, Carlane, commenced her address. Her confident stride and assertive tone seemed to echo 100 past victories. She embarked on painting a stark, unforgiving picture of my life, rippling through the courtroom aimed to embarrass and belittle. Her harsh words delineated a life stripped of stability: no permanent job, sporadic financial aid, living in temporary housing. Hardly a fit environment for children, she claimed. I didn't glance at Derek. His face, impassive and detached, was easy to visualize, observing the events unfold as if he bore no responsibility. Yet he was the architect of my financial downfall, having drained our joint account just before abandoning us, only contributing to expenses when it suited his image. Nevertheless, none of my efforts or struggles seemed to bear weight in that room. The evidence laid out before the judge were documents and photographs from Derek's perspective, showcasing his immaculate house, a well-stocked kitchen, and plans for private schooling. Carlane methodically sorted through her files, displaying my bank statements with disdain as if airing dirty laundry. "Your Honor," she asserted, "my client provides a consistent, secure environment. The children have their own rooms, regular meals, a nanny." Meanwhile, she painted a grim picture of my life, ignoring the sheer determination that saw me taking any available job, often paid under the table, as I juggled childcare on my own. She omitted the fact that I quickly resolved the rent issue she highlighted, or that I had liquidated almost everything of value to ensure we had food. The judge didn't respond immediately, his gaze lingering on the documents as if they corroborated an already formed assumption: that my efforts, though earnest, weren't sufficient. I wanted desperately to advocate for myself, to explain the full context, yet I was cautioned against appearing too defensive, too emotional, too anything. Thus, I sat in silence, engulfed in a mix of shame and silent fury, my fingers clawing into the chair's edge. Beside me, Arya quietly doodled with a blunt crayon while Luca's gaze bore into Derek, his eyes narrowed in silent accusation. Then came Carlane's remark, sharp and devastating. "Why should she get the children if she can't even afford to care for them?" The words reverberated within me, a cruel echo in the hollows of my resolve. Why should I? My vision blurred with unshed tears. My life, stark on paper, lacked the polish of prosperity. No new outfits, no gourmet lunches, no extracurricular indulgences. Yet, every night, I was there, soothing fears, banishing shadows, their constant, unwavering caretaker. And sat up late into the night, mending their torn clothes with patches because buying new ones was a luxury I couldn't afford. None of that mattered to the court. In their eyes, I was just another number, a number I couldn't provide. The judge's gaze bore into me, his face etched with skepticism. As he parted his lips to speak, a gentle tug on my sleeve interrupted him. My son, Luca, his voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Mom, can I show the judge the letter I found in Dad's safe?" Confused, I replied, "What letter?" My eyes widened as he produced a creased piece of paper from his pocket. A cold wave washed over me. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted as Derek straightened up, and Carla's eyes snapped to the paper in Luca's hand. "Luca, what is that?" I murmured. He didn't reply to me, but instead turned to the judge, asking, "May I give this to you, sir?" The judge, visibly surprised, nodded and gestured him forward. Luca navigated the aisle, passing stunned expressions, and presented the letter to the judge with both hands. An unsettling silence enveloped the room. Derek began to perspire. Carla leaned in, whispering urgently, her previous composure slipping. The judge carefully unfolded the letter, and as his eyes darted across the lines, his expression morphed from puzzled to enlightened, then stern. He fixed his eyes on Derek. "Mr. Morrow," he began, "would you care to explain this document?" At those words, the air in the courtroom seemed to thicken. Derek's eyes shot open. He stuttered to form words, but none came. Carla's whispers grew frantic. Clearly, the contents of the letter were pivotal. I leaned in, my heartbeat escalating, trying to glean any hint from the judge's demeanor. Holding the letter carefully, he read aloud. To Derek Morrow from Elbecker CPA, subject Strategic Financial Maneuvers for Divorce Preparation. Pause. He looks around the courtroom, then back at Derek. This letter details a plan crafted 3 months prior to your divorce filing. It discusses the creation of overseas accounts and shell companies and the manipulation of reported earnings to affect the outcomes of custody and support battles. Notably, it states, ensure primary custody at all costs, but minimally appear financially competent and morally upright to limit her legal recourse. He ceased reading. The silence that followed was almost physical, oppressive and laden with judgment. All eyes fixed on Derek. Even Carla, who had always seemed invincible, appeared shocked. She slowly turned to him, her whisper almost audible. "Is this true?" Rooted to the spot, I was caught between shock and a rising anger. Although I had always suspected Derek of being manipulative about finances, having it confirmed in such a public, official way was staggering. The judge set the letter down neatly and addressed Derek sternly. "You have deliberately misled the court. You've attempted to sway the outcome of this trial through financial subterfuge. This document is a calculated attempt to use your wealth and deceit to estrange these children from their mother." Derek stood up sharply. "That letter is outdated. It was never acted upon. It's irrelevant." "Sit down, Mr. Morrow," the judge commanded, silencing him with his decisive tone. My daughter, Arya, momentarily looked up from her sketchbook, reaching out for my hand. Encircling her with my arm, I didn't take my eyes off the judge. He then turned to me. "Miss Miro, were you aware of this letter before today?" "No, Your Honor," I managed to say, my voice constricted. "And your son discovered this?" I nodded. "Yes, he hasn't spoken of it until today." Luca then looked at me, his eyes hopeful. "I thought it might help us. I found it while I was searching for my tablet at Dad's place. I didn't want to make trouble, just didn't want us to lose." The judge regarded him quietly for a prolonged moment. Then his expression softened slightly. "You did the right thing, young man," he affirmed. He then addressed Carla. "I'll be thoroughly reviewing this document and pausing these proceedings for a complete investigation into Mr. Morrow's finances. Meanwhile, primary custody will. Ms. Morrow retains custody, and the defendant's parenting time is temporarily halted pending further resolution." These solemn words drifted to me like leaves falling slowly to the ground. My ears caught them, yet it took moments for their gravity to pierce through the shock. My legs wavered under the weight of their import, and I collapsed into the nearest seat, pulling my children close. Carla Dean remained stoic, her lips a firm line, her arms crossed and sealed with tension. Silence was her only recourse. Any arguments now would be futile. Derek sat motionless, a statuesque figure of resignation. Following the judge's departure, the bailiff officially closed the session. Stirred from my trance only by the necessity of comfort, I encircled my children with my arms, grounding myself through their presence. "Did I cause trouble?" Luca's small voice broke the silence. "No, my love," I reassured him gently. "You were courageous." His silent nod spoke volumes of mature understanding beyond his years. It dawned on me then what immense burdens children endure and the resilience required to voice painful truths. The courtroom battle was far from over, yet this moment felt tinged with a different essence, as if the scales of justice twitched, however slightly, towards fairness. Exiting the courtroom, each step felt surreal, buoyed by a sliver of hope, as the echo of the judge's declarations reverberated within me. He had paused the proceedings, set aside Derek's parental rights, and most importantly, he had listened. Outside, the brisk air bit at our faces. Luca stopped to fix Arya's coat, showing care that belied his years. Overwhelmed by a profound sense of gratitude, I watched him. Words of thanks dissolved on my tongue for his bravery that outshone the adults that day. Days later, a rigorous inquiry into Derek's finances commenced. Ms. Trent, the appointed investigator, was meticulous and never underestimated me. She pored over the details, examined past financial disclosures, and sought complete transparency, something Derek seemingly dreaded. As the investigation unfolded, a tangled web of deceit started to unravel. Hidden accounts, shadowy transfers, and obscured cash flows painted a picture of calculated evasion. With each revelation, my faith in my perceptions, obscured by years of doubt and manipulation, began to mend. By the time of the final hearing, armed with newfound resolve and modest yet significant attire, I felt a semblance of empowerment returning. Derek's presence had dimmed, his usual bravado replaced by the somber reality his lawyer now had to navigate. The courtroom, once a place of anxious uncertainty, now held a different atmosphere. The judge wasted no time in addressing the findings. This court finds significant evidence of deliberate financial deception aimed at skewing these proceedings. Such actions do not serve the best interests of the children involved, the judge decreed, shifting his gaze to me with a nod of acknowledgement. In light of these findings, this court awards Ms. Morrow full custody of Luca and Arya. Mr. Morrow will also be liable for backdated child support and will only have monitored visits until further evaluation. The moment was profound, yet I held my breath, half expecting a reversal of fortune. But the order was signed, the gavel struck, and quiet jubilance filled the space around us. Arya's joyful embrace and Luca's firm, reassuring grip told me all I needed to know. That evening, our simple celebration of pancakes and music wasn't just about joy. It was a declaration of a new beginning, solid and hopeful. In our cozy little kitchen, laughter echoed through the room, bouncing off walls and filling the space with joy. I found myself seated on the floor, each of my children nestled in my lap. Arya was humming a tune, while Luca was busy scribbling on a sketch pad. Peering over, I noticed his drawing, a simple depiction of a house with 3 stick figures under it, and scribbled above were the words, "Home is where Mom is." That letter, he discovered, was more than mere evidence. It served as a beacon of hope, a passage from a world cloaked in dread to one that breathed tranquility. Luca could have hidden it, discarded it, or overlooked it. Yet, he chose to uphold the truth. At just 7, my son distinguished right from wrong. Amidst a sea of grown-ups in the courtroom, it was he who stood tall with courage. It's been half a year since our day in court, and my thoughts often navigate back to that time. I reminisce not only about the moment of the judge's favorable decision, or Derek's astonished expression, but also about the silent fortitude that carried us through. This strength wasn't derived from might or wealth, but from pure, unyielding love, a kind that persists even when all else has faltered. Following the verdict, our life didn't miraculously perfect itself. I continued to work exhaustive hours. Each shopping trip was meticulously calculated to the last penny. Bargain shopping and coupon collecting were still part of our routine, and luxuries that seemed ordinary to other families were often beyond our reach. However, the lingering fear had dissipated. No longer was there a looming threat ready to snatch everything away. Derek tried to claw back some semblance of control by attempting to lower his support payments and challenging the imposed visitation constraints, but the compelling evidence and firm judicial support rendered his efforts futile. He attended a few scheduled visitations before he ceased his attempts altogether. I spared the kids the complexities, sharing only what they needed to understand, that their father wasn't prepared to offer consistency, and they deserved individuals who did. Luca occasionally brought up the letter. One quiet evening, curled up together on the sofa, he voiced his worry. Was I in trouble for taking it? I reassured him with a firm shake of my head and a piercing gaze into his eyes. No, sweetheart. You were courageous. You stood by the truth when it was most crucial. He seemed to grasp the gravity of his actions and rested his head against my shoulder. That interaction was a stark reminder of the unseen burdens children bear. He had protected that document for weeks, waiting for the right moment to speak up. choosing righteousness without any prompt. I began attending counseling sessions. At first, voicing my struggles felt foreign, and acknowledging aloud the severity of what we endured was daunting. Yet, healing demands openness. The more I talked, the more I understood how deeply I had internalized shame, guilt, and the misleading belief that poverty equated to personal failure. My counselor illuminated a truth I had overlooked. I wasn't feeble for facing hardships. I was resilient for enduring them, for maintaining a home, for representing myself in court without legal assistance, for prioritizing my children's needs consistently. A breakthrough arrived one weekend when I secured a part time job in an office, which, despite its lack of allure, offered stability and benefits. I invested in a laptop to pursue online classes in the evenings, aiming for a certification in bookkeeping, a skill I had always possessed but never envisioned as a viable career path. The children, too, began to thrive. Arya found a new confidant at preschool and became more expressive and self assured, as noted by her teacher. Luca immersed himself in the school's art club and proudly had one of his artworks, a robust tree with sprawling roots, displayed in the corridor, captioned with a single word, growing. And so, we grow. Progress might not always feel swift or effortless, but it is consistent. Each week, we inch further away from dread and closer to serenity. On occasions, people wonder how I remained composed during the court proceedings, how I managed not to crumble. The truth? I nearly did. But as a mother, when your children's futures are at stake, you discover the strength to continue. Not because it's the easy choice, but because surrendering is simply not an option. This tale commenced in a courtroom where accusations of inadequacy due to my financial state were hurled at me, but it evolved into a journey of overcoming hope and relentless maternal love. Be an exemplary parent. The revelation came from the most unexpected source, a young child, quiet but firm, embodying the essence of love and bravery. Our victory wasn't drawn from wealth, influence, or flawless facades. We triumphed through sheer sincerity, unending kindness, and an unbreakable spirit, even amidst seemingly insurmountable challenges. One vital lesson I've grasped is that justice may not always be swift, but it is attainable. Often, it makes its entrance subtly, like a discreet note clasped in a child's gentle grip, presented with pure courage and heartfelt sincerity. That day marked a profound transformation. It altered not just the legal proceedings in a courtroom, but resonated deeply within me, reigniting my spirit. It was then that I transitioned from merely enduring life to genuinely living it. If this narrative resonates with you, if it echoes the silent boldness required to persevere through adversity, please take a moment to engage with this video. Spread the message by sharing it with someone who might find solace in knowing they are not isolated. I welcome your comments. Parents, fighters, believers in truth and justice, I value your insights and interactions. I read each response diligently. For more heartfelt tales of endurance, compassion, and the battles we fight for what's truly important, consider subscribing to the channel. Here, we cultivate a community that recognizes individuals beyond their battles. Thank you for joining us and sharing in our vision.